Welcome back to the show. You know, there are a lot of strange policy moves coming out of Ottawa that seem very radical. Now, I accept that Justin Trudeau ran on a radical campaign platform that very few people read, but there's one particular proposal that was never mentioned in the campaign, yet it's being rolled out by Trudeau's immigration minister, John McCallum. And joining us now via Skype to talk about it is our friend Candice Malcolm. Candice is a fellow for the Canadian Global Affairs Institute and a columnist with Sun Media. Great to see you, Candice.
Great to be here.
Well, you wrote a very troubling article in the Sun Media newspapers about a new language barrier, so to speak, that the Trudeau Liberals want to put up. I mean, tell us in a nutshell this radical proposal, and that's John McCallum's own word. What is this radical proposal he wants to bring into our immigration laws that was never in any campaign platform?
That's right, Ezra. It was never mentioned during the election at all. And John McCallum himself says it's radical. They want to get rid of the language requirement for people becoming Canadian citizens. So right now you have to pass a very basic, very easy French or English test in order to get citizenship in Canada. It's always been that way. We've always had the expectation that newcomers learn our language. It's one of the reasons why Canada actually has a successful integration model when it comes to immigration. It's one of the most successful aspects of Canadian immigration policy. And all of a sudden, the Liberals say that they want to get rid of it. They say it's too burdensome. We don't know the details exactly. John McCallum just sort of hinted that it's coming within the next couple of weeks, and that some of his Liberal MPs are complaining that their constituents think it's too burdensome to learn a little bit of English or French in order to become a citizen. So what McCallum and Trudeau are suggesting is that a person who doesn't speak a single word of French or English can now become a Canadian citizen. It's outrageous, Ezra. I couldn't believe it when I heard it.
It is incredible. I mean, being a citizen should not be burden-free. I mean, you shouldn't be a slave to the state, but if you come to our country, we have 2 official languages, and you know, I'm so sorry that someone would be asked to go through the burden of learning one of our languages. Hey, tell you what, don't go to the burden, go to another language, go to another country where they don't ask you to speak English and French. I don't know what those countries are. Maybe it's Europe. But that's the thing, Candice, if you look at countries that have no burdens, no obligations on immigrants whatsoever, especially language, you'll see ghettoization where there's no integration. They're not truly becoming part of the nationality, and that leads to all sorts of social ills, whether it's crime or just ethnic separatism, which is what you're seeing in France and Germany. This is about making immigrants successful, and if some would-be immigrant doesn't want the burden of learning English and French, fine. I'm sure there's plenty more who would accept those burdens, am I right?
Right, then don't come. I mean, we're ultimately doing a disservice to these newcomers if we tell them not to bother learning French or English. It's a very important part of the integration process in order to ensure that future generations are successful here in Canada. Exactly what you're talking about, official multiculturalism, the cult of official multiculturalism, as we see in Europe. In Germany, there's third-generation people who have been living in Germany that aren't citizens, that don't speak German, that are completely ostracized. Do we want that in Canada? No, of course not. And language is an incredibly important, even symbolic aspect. When you come to Canada, learn French or English, you start to integrate, it helps you economically, it helps you fit into your community. It's common sense, Ezra. And the fact that the Liberals would all of a sudden announce out of nowhere that they don't think it's important anymore, I think that there's a political element to this as well. I think that they're basically saying, come to Canada, we're going to take away all the rights and responsibilities of your citizenship, just hand out citizenship and hopefully create lifelong Liberal voters. Yeah. That's what I see when I look at this policy, and I think it's a huge mistake that's going to have consequences for a very long time to come.
It's so strange. I mean, how are you going to make a new friend if you don't speak the language? Well, you're not going to. You're going to only talk to other people in your ghettoized community. How are you going to get a job? Like, how would you even know that a job was available? How could you apply for the job? How could you work at a job? How could you interact and integrate? How could you even do that? What kind of person would say, I am not going to learn the language, it's too much of a, yeah, it's a burden. If you don't want the burden, don't come. I mean, just looking ahead to all the social and economic dysfunction that this will insist on, that this will directly lead to? Just from a practical point of view, it's a disaster, let alone the moral point of view. You know, there's something that Justin Trudeau said in his loving interview with the New York Times a couple months ago. You know, when he was doing all these, wow, he's so handsome interviews with Vogue and New York Times, he said that Canada does not have a core identity. He said that. I don't have the verbatim quote on hand here. But he's trying to make that happen. He's trying to, and even taking away language, which is so bizarre because he's from Quebec. Tell a Quebecer that French is not an important part of their culture, and they'll call you an anti-Quebec bigot. And here you have the federal Liberals saying, no, you don't have to learn French. I mean, I'm not an Anglo pride activist. I'm just saying it won't work. How do you think this is going to go over in Quebec, Candice? Have you seen any pushback in Quebec, or are they still madly in love with the boy prince Justin Trudeau?
I can't imagine it goes over well. And Ezra, you know, Canada spends $2.4 billion a year pushing official bilingualism, teaching English Canadians French and French Canadians English. It's bizarre that all of a sudden the Trudeau government would say to newcomers, don't bother learning either. I can't imagine it's going to go over well in Quebec. And Trudeau is wrong when he says that Canada doesn't have a core identity. Of course we do. Of course we have our own values, our own identity. Language is a key part of that. You know, Trudeau's pushing out this bland official multiculturalism myth. It's not even true. And I think that he's doing a disservice to the entire country, to newcomers, and to future generations if they grow up thinking that there is no Canadian values, there is no Canadian culture, and you can just import any foreign values that you want and supersede our values here in Canada. It's wrong. It's wrong-headed, and I think it's a huge mistake that the Liberals are even flirting with this idea. I hope they change their course before they actually implement this disastrous policy.
Yeah, it is a disaster. I mean, I don't think that this government is being scrutinized yet by the media. I think they're still in honeymoon mode, and I grant that when you win an election, you have a certain mandate, but this is so outside the lines, so counterproductive, so slapdash. I think John McCallum, it's only been 90 days he's been minister. I think he is already a failure. Everything he touches is a fiasco, especially the rush for refugees. And this sounds like a mad dream he had. Well, listen, I really appreciate you bringing this news to our attention, Candice. Thank you very much. And look forward to talking to you again. Even though I find your news very upsetting, it's very important that we hear it. Great to see you again.
Thanks for having me.
Right on. Stay with us, folks. More after these short messages.